This is 2022's The People We Hate at the Wedding. Warning, spoilers ahead. The story starts with a girl named Eloise. She lives in London and is about to get married. She decides to invite her mom, Donna, and her two siblings, Alice and Paul, who live in different parts of the US. After getting the invitation, Alice calls her brother Paul to see what he thinks. Neither of them has been in touch with Eloise for a while, so they're not too eager to accept. Well, given how wealthy their sister is, they probably see her wedding invitation as more of a power move or maybe even an insult. Meanwhile, Donna is having trouble picking an outfit for the wedding. A store clerk steps in to help, and Donna starts opening up about her worries. Long story short, she hasn't seen her kids for years, not since her second husband's funeral. Eloise is her daughter from her first marriage to a guy named Henrik, with whom she lived in England for a few years. When Henrik cheated on her, Donna moved back to the US, while Eloise stayed with her wealthy dad. That's how things went down. Donna tries calling her son, but he's ignoring her. Seems like it's not the first time. Paul, by the way, works at some rehab center in LA, and their business is rather peculiar. His patient's got a garbage phobia or something? How does that even work? Get into a trash bin. That'll be $5,000. Oh, and here's a hug on the house. Alice's boss, Jonathan, invites her to dinner. Before that, though, he gives her a little tour of the supply closet. At dinner, Alice opens up about her feelings toward her sister. She's upset with her for not showing up when Alice had a miscarriage. Since then, she cut off contact and doesn't want to go to the wedding. But when Jonathan suggests they go together, she's not so against the idea anymore. Oh, she's so mad at her sister, but the moment she has a chance to show off her rich boyfriend, it's a different story? That makes sense, I guess. Later, Alice drives Jonathan home. She knows he's married, but he tells her it won't last long and that he plans to leave his wife soon. At that very moment, Alice notices they've just had a baby. Yeah, well, classic. Meanwhile, Paul is talking with his boyfriend, Dominic. Dominic wants them to go to the wedding together, but Paul's still against it. He's got work, plus he doesn't want to see his mom there. He's mad that after his dad died, she never even talked about him again. Threw all his stuff away, yet kept the photo of Henrik. Paul's anger with his mom seems unjustified. Maybe she's got her own reasons for disliking his father, but since he refuses to talk to her, how could she ever explain that to him? The next day, Paul gets called into his boss's office and he is told he seriously violated workplace protocol by hugging one of their patients. Apparently, that's a big no-no in their rehab program. So, his boss puts him on unpaid leave for a month. Well, at least Paul's got a reason to head to the wedding. Though honestly, if I were him, I wouldn't return to that job. His boss is a lunatic. Later, Paul calls Alice to let her know he's changed his mind and will be flying to the wedding too. Alice shares the news with Donna, who's over the moon. At the airport, Alice calls Jonathan, but he says he can't fly just yet because of his wife and kid. Though, he promises to meet her in London later. Paul, on the other hand, finds out that his hotel reservation has been canceled. Turns out, Dominic did it. He says he wanted to surprise Paul and has already arranged for them to stay in the fancy apartment of his rich friend, Alcott Oswald. It's pretty obvious that Dominic and Alcott are more than just friends, so this surprise is really about setting up a little three-way date for them. Soon, the whole family arrives in London. Donna is greeted at the airport by her ex-husband, Henrik, and they start kissing right away. Alice steps off the plane with a guy named Dennis, whom she met during the flight. Meanwhile, Paul and his boyfriend are picked up by Alcott, who makes some pretty suggestive moves on Paul right in the car. Alice and Dennis arrive at the hotel, where she discovers that Eloise upgraded her room to a luxury suite and covered all extra expenses. At first, Alice isn't too thrilled about her sister's generosity, but she quickly changes her mind when she sees what this place has to offer. I love how Dennis literally just met Alice, and he's already crashing in a luxury hotel and eating for free. What a charmer! Later, Eloise invites the whole family out for dinner at a restaurant. At the table, she suggests an ice-breaking game where she asks her siblings would-you-rather style questions. But instead of bringing them closer, it does the opposite. Paul throws shade at their mom, and Alice takes jabs at her sister while getting pretty drunk. After dinner, the family keeps bickering like a bunch of brats, which really frustrates Eloise. She tells them to get their act together because she won't tolerate this kind of behavior at her wedding. Looks like inviting the whole family was a mistake. It would probably be easier to fly to the moon than to make these people get along. The next day, Eloise, her friends, and Alice head out for the bachelorette party. While the friends are busy picking out the perfect outfit for Alice, the sisters stay in the car. Eloise offers her a great job opportunity, but Alice turns it down. What she really wanted was for Eloise to finally apologize for not being there when she needed her most. Eloise acts a bit strange here too. If she knows it was a big deal to her sister, she could have just apologized and squashed the whole issue. But instead, it's like she doesn't want to admit any faults, making things even more complicated. Eloise sets up a boat ride along the Thames, complete with alcohol and some bearded guy acting as the captain, but the party quickly goes south. Alice once again provokes Eloise with her sharp jokes, and before long, everyone ends up in the water, except for the discount captain. Meanwhile, Paul is hanging out at a bar with Dominic and Alcott. Dominic is trying to get Paul into a threesome, but Paul's not really into it just yet and keeps stalling. As for Donna and Enrique, those two aren't wasting any time. They've not only been reminiscing about the old days, but seem to be rekindling whatever feelings they had for each other. Enric's quite the character. He has his fun with younger women, and now he's crawling back to his ex-wife. Though something tells me that won't last long either. Later, Eloise tries again to make peace with Alice, explaining that she really wanted to come visit her back then, but couldn't. Alice isn't having it. She's still angry and says that after the wedding, she'll go back to the US and they can stop pretending to be sisters altogether. Meanwhile, the trio comes back to the apartment from the bar. Paul and Dominic start fighting over who gets to undress their mutual friend, and then they argue for a while about who should play what role. And it seems like nothing really works out. Okay, so now they're just fighting over Alcott all of a sudden? Their relationship is just too messed up, if you ask me. Jonathan texts Alice that he won't be able to make it to London, so she decides to spend the night with Dennis. She opens up to him about herself and the complicated mess she's in with her boss. Dennis confesses his feelings, saying he fell for her at first sight. Alice, moved by his words, invites him to go to her sister's wedding with her. Probably the first good decision Alice has made this whole time. Obviously, nothing was ever going to work out with a married man who now has a kid. The next day, Paul and Dominic decide to sort things out. Paul breaks down, saying he's done so much to make Dominic happy, but it's never enough. He starts crying, and Dominic tells him they should break up because he wants to be with Alcott. Alcott, on the other hand, is more interested in Paul, but Paul doesn't want anything to do with it. Meanwhile, Alice is getting ready for the rehearsal dinner with Dennis. She receives a text from Jonathan saying he loves her, that he's left his wife, and is now on his way to London. Alice tries to hide this from Dennis, but he's not fooled and quickly figures things out. Dennis still has feelings for her and is frustrated that instead of being with a decent guy, she chooses to feel like garbage in the relationship with her boss. Couldn't have put it any better. I'm totally on Dennis's side here. It seems like Alice just isn't learning anything. At the rehearsal dinner, Paul runs into the groom Oliver and his parents. After tossing out a couple of goofy jokes, he begins sharing his failed threesome experience with them. Just in time, Eloise swoops in and takes him into the kitchen for a chat. Paul starts venting about how bad she is for not being there for Alice. He then complains about their mom hitting on her former husband and how it's a good thing their father Bill isn't around to see it. Eloise reveals to him that his dad hated the fact that Paul was gay and thought it was disgusting. Only Donna stood by Paul and pushed Bill to accept his son the way he is. Yeah, I could have guessed that his dad wasn't exactly perfect, so now it must be really awkward for Paul to realize he's been a jerk to their mom for no good reason. At dinner, Oliver gives a speech while Alice receives a text from Jonathan saying he's arriving soon. A few seconds later, she spots Dominic's wife Marissa, who immediately recognizes her. She publicly accuses Alice of sleeping with her husband and ruining her life, launching into a full-blown tirade in front of the guests before trying to kick Alice's butt. I don't know about you, but I'm on Marissa's side here. Let's be real, Alice deserved this. Meanwhile, Paul notices that Enrique is back to his old tricks. Paul decides to comfort him in his own way. Enrique, furious, starts chasing after Paul and soon gets punched in the face in front of the guests. Alright, we all know there's no real wedding without a good old fight. So there you have it. The chaos quickly escalates. Alice finally gets hit by Marissa and Donna rushes to her defense. Naturally, the trio ends up in jail. Donna concludes that they're the very people everyone hates at weddings. Paul apologizes for how he's treated his mom and finally makes up with her. Just then, a police officer comes in to read a note Eloise left for them. In short, she doesn't want to see them at her wedding and regrets trying to reunite the family. Well, that was to be expected, but at least she reconciled Paul with their mother, so that's something. Although Dennis is upset with Alice, he drives them all back to the hotel from the police station. Alice is still being herself, so even though she has a chance to be with Dennis, she's still leaning toward going back to Jonathan. The next day, Oliver visits the trio and tells them that Eloise had a meltdown and no one knows where she is. But Donna quickly figures out where she might be. They all head to Taco Bell because Donna used to take Eloise there for birthday parties when she was a kid. Alice decides to talk to her alone. Once there, Eloise apologizes to her. She didn't know about Alice's miscarriage and reveals that she couldn't make it to her because shortly before that, she had learned about her own inability to conceive. Not even her fiancé knows, and she's too scared to tell him. Alice reassures her, saying she should confess and that they'll do it together. Well, of course, because in the end, there always has to be a plot twist like in your typical Brazilian telenovela. Later, she shares the news with Oliver, and it seems he hasn't changed her feelings about her. After that, the wedding ceremony finally takes place, and the whole family happily walks the bride down the aisle. On the way back to America, Alice runs into Dennis again. She's learned from her experiences and tells him she's finally broken up with Jonathan. A year later, the family gathers again for a group photo. Eloise and Oliver have adopted a child, Alice is now with Dennis, and Paul is single, but he seems to be okay with it. And that was it! Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.